The Dream Traveler and the Crystal Berries by Luanne Griffin, dedicated to my family. Chapter 1. The path. It was a hot August summer night and the crickets were chirping loudly with the faint sound of a faraway train in the background. My best friend Sarah and I were supposed to be sleeping out in my family camper. The old camper was parked in our backyard, but instead of sleeping we were walking around the neighborhood on what we called a middle-of-the-night adventure. If we got caught we definitely would have been grounded or never allowed to have a sleepover in the camper again. I was 12 years old and Sarah was turning 12 in a few months. I had straight auburn, brown hair that was bleached from swimming, and the Sunday my hair was halfway down my back with big brown eyes. My family often referred to me as skinny. Sarah had dirty blonde curly hair that fell just a bit past her shoulders. She had pretty green eyes, dimples, and was slightly bigger boned than I was. We had known each other since kindergarten and were best friends ever since. Our big adventure was only to raid a garden in the middle of the night. We had heard the older kids from the neighborhood talking about it and it sounded like it would be a lot of fun. Earlier during the day, we had found a garden that was located about 2 blocks away. It seemed to be full of stuff, so we decided to give it our own name and call it the Garden of Plenty. We had heard that an old woman lived there with her mute grandson. I had seen the old woman before hanging out her laundry on the clothesline, but I had never seen her grandson. The old woman always wore a scarf on her head with some strands of gray hair that poked out, and she always wore a dress with a stained apron over it. There were many gardens in our neighborhood, but hers was the one that we wanted to check out. On our way to the garden, we saw the neighbors Mr. and Mrs. Wilson driving in their rusty, noisy, old green pickup truck. I pulled Sarah into some nearby bushes to hide. She yelped, and we giggled as they drove by. It looked as though Mrs. Wilson had spotted us, but they continued driving. After all was clear, we ran all the way to the Garden of Plenty, which was located at the end of a dead-end street across the train tracks. It was really dark. We noticed that 2 of the street lights were burnt out on the short street. We quietly opened the dingy, creaky, white broken gate that led to the garden. The garden was a fairly big, but it was sort of creepy looking and it gave off a mysterious but lonely feeling. It had many vines that seemed to have no end to them, with a few antique-looking broken lawn statues that sat randomly throughout the garden. We looked around and then helped ourselves to some carrots, cucumbers, and a green tomato. We had forgotten to bring a bag, so we just used our t-shirts folded over in the front to hold the vegetables. Suddenly, one of the burnt-out street lights came back on, and then we saw a light go on in the house. We were just about to bolt, but then my eyes met with the figure in the window. It must have been the old woman's grandson. He was staring right at us with literally no expression on his face. It was quite dark, but from what I observed, he was actually cute, probably 2 or 3 years older than us. He had dark, longer, wavy hair with dark eyes, longer than other boys I known. The dark shadow showed a slim build with bigger squared shoulders. In what seemed like the longest seconds ever, we had decided to run, and then Sarah tripped on a vine. She had seemed to hurt her ankle. She whimpered and I said, "Sarah, get up. Hurry up." Finally, we were running and got back to the camper in what seemed like only a few minutes, laughing as we ran. Sarah was saying, "Ouch, ouch, ouch," and limping and laughing at the same time. When we got back to the camper, we laughed a lot replaying the whole scenario, and then we looked at our stolen goods. Sarah had dropped all of her stuff when she fell, and all we ended up with was 1 green tomato and a cucumber. We laughed more and then had snack that didn't include the vegetables at all, but decided to eat from our stash of chips and red licorice instead. We fell asleep talking about what we would do if we were rich. Describing our mansions in great detail with our large staff of maids and butlers, then we finally dozed off. That night I had the strangest, most bizarre dream. I had dreamt of running down a dark path in an unknown land. The path had bushes on each side. The bushes had berries that looked like crystal, they were shiny and lit up. I had the urge to keep walking down the dark winding path. It was almost like I had to do it or needed to walk down it with no choice or will. All of a sudden, up ahead I saw someone, but I couldn't make out whom it was, but I continued to follow the dark, but slim figure. Then I woke up to the sound of a stick or something hitting a metal pole and forgot where I was for a moment. I peeked out the little camper window only to see the bratty neighbor kid wearing a hockey helmet and hitting the sign pole with his broken hockey stick, making a long repetitive clanging noise. He was a weird kid. I once had seen him eat old chewed gum off of the hot pavement. Chapter 2 The Mysterious Note. It was the day after Labor Day and I was off to the first day of the school year. My teacher, Mr. Prozac, gave us the assignment of writing a story. He was known as the cool teacher and I was glad that I had him this year. The best story would be picked for the making of a class film. I wrote a story about a baby being stolen from a baby carriage at the circus and then the baby was later found. It turns out that a monkey had stolen the baby and was safely returned to the mother. The story had a parade and clowns. Unexpectedly, my story was picked. The class was now to plan the details for the production of the film. A few of my female classmates were planning to be the baton twirlers in the circus parade. I wanted to wear a costume and twirl a baton as well. Sarah and I were practicing for some time to learn the talent, and after only a few weeks we actually become somewhat successful at it. The bell rang and school was out. I was walking home myself because Sarah had a dentist appointment and was picked up from school. On the way home, a jealous girl named Samantha Harris tried to fight me. She said I was looking at her boyfriend and a bunch of other stuff that wasn't true. She said that I always flirted with all the boys at our school and that I thought I was better than everyone else. I didn't even like her boyfriend Austin, but I had noticed him staring at me. She pulled my hair and pushed me a few times until I fell. She was with a few of her friends and she was trying to act tough. Normally, Samantha was fairly nice to me. I was a little bit scared, but thankfully they eventually left. I was walking by myself thinking about what I was going to eat when I got home. When I got home, my mom said that she saw a boy put a letter in our mailbox. She passed me the envelope as I was asking, "Who?" She shrugged her shoulders and puffed on her cigarette as if I was interrupting the soap that she was watching. On the front was my name, Emily, written in red ink calligraphy. I curiously ripped open the mysterious envelope. Inside there was a paper that looked like it was cut from a wrinkled brown paper bag. It read, "Emily, please come to the path tonight." It was signed Alexander. I didn't know who Alexander was and I wasn't very sure about this path either. Weird, what is going on? I tried to ask my mom about some more details, but she just said, "Emily, not now." That night I fell asleep wondering and imagining what this might be all about. Maybe it was a joke that my Sarah was playing on me, or maybe it was that Samantha Harris. Or maybe I was the wrong Emily, but with the wrong house too? Unlikely. I fell asleep watching my fuzzy, snowy TV. That night I dreamt of walking in the dark by myself. I was overwhelmed with a strange, supernatural feeling, one that I'd never felt before. It was calming, yet tingly, and exciting all at the same time. Up ahead I noticed a path. Could it be the path with the lit berries on the bushes? Yes, it was. I walked down it, examining the dark green lush bushes with the shiny crystal berries. I was not afraid at all. At the end of it, I came to a clearing. It was a beautiful clearing. Iridescent prism colors shone down on the surface, and the surface I was standing on felt as soft as velvet but looked as clear as ice. Although it felt soft, it also felt solid. It didn't make much sense to me, but yet I somehow understood it. There were many people gathered around. To my amazement, the cute mute boy was there. I think it was him. He came over to me and introduced himself. "Hi, I'm Alexander, I'm glad you could make it." He shook my hand as I stood in awe. Now some other people started to walk over to greet me, people of all ages, size, various cultures, and races. They all had a kindred spirit and I had felt a calming but strange connection to them. Chapter 3 Alexander. I woke up, but this time I knew that things were going to be very different from here on in. I quickly completed my morning routine of eating breakfast, brushing my teeth and hair and washing my face. I grabbed my backpack and rushed off to school. I couldn't wait to tell my best friend Sarah everything. It was Tuesday and we were going to start with the organization of the film production. Our parts were given and costumes were being made. We didn't have any actual schoolwork to do, so everyone was happy. I talked to Sarah a little bit and asked her if she could come over after school. School was finally over and we walked home together. On the way home, we saw Samantha Harris, but she didn't say or do anything to us. She actually crossed the street to walk on the other side as if she was avoiding us, probably because she was by herself, or maybe she thought I would retaliate. Samantha had reddish hair that never seemed to be brushed, and she was at least 2 inches taller than the both of us. She wore old, faded clothes that were much too small on her. She had developed faster than us and had been wearing bras for at least a year, something that we couldn't wait to have and wear. I told Sarah about what happened with Samantha and she was shocked. Sarah suggested that we follow her and confront her. However, I just wanted to tell Sarah about my dream. I was just about to tell her when Alexander and his grandmother walked right by us. Alexander was carrying a huge bag of flour and his grandmother had 2 bags of groceries. He looked back and smiled at me. I swear my heart skipped a jump and began to melt. Sarah noticed him smiling at me. She asked, "Isn't that the boy that saw us in his garden? Doesn't he even go to school?" I answered, "I don't know." I replied quickly and I asked, "Do you think he is cute?" She said, "I guess, but I heard that he doesn't or can't even talk." "He's strange," she added. I decided not tell her my dream just yet in fear of her thinking that I was completely crazy. We then talked about the raiding of the garden and how much fun that we had that night. We made a plan to go somewhere else next time, maybe to the forts that were made by some of the boys in our class. We had heard them talking about it, so we knew where they were. When we arrived at my house, my mom said we could have some ginger cookies. We grabbed a few cookies, went to my room for a bit, and talked while looking at one of my photo albums. There were pictures of my family and cousins. Sarah asked, "Who is this cute guy?" "Oh, that's my cousin Matt. He was in a bad car accident a few years ago and has been in a coma for a year and a half now," I answered. Sarah replied, "Really? How sad, he is so cute." Sarah had left for home and I went downstairs to eat supper. My mom and dad were eating and watching the news. It seemed like they didn't even notice me. My mom was a homemaker who was in her 40s, but apparently looked a lot younger. So everyone said. My father was in his early 50s with dark hair and a potbelly. He was truck driver who swore a lot for no reason. We all ate silently while I watched TV in a daze. Chapter 4. The gift. That night I couldn't wait to go to sleep, which was probably unusual for a girl my age. I had a shower and tried to sleep but just couldn't fall asleep. I woke up to read for a little while. I was reading but I guess I finally fell asleep because here I was once again walking down the path. When I got to the clearing, I didn't see Alexander. Where was Alexander? To my absolute amazement, I saw my cousin Matt, the one who was in the coma. He approached me and we hugged. I told him all about his family and how they missed him and what was happening in his family's life. I started asking him many questions. He said that dream traveling was a gift that we had inherited from our great-grandmother. She was a Cherokee Indian and spoke about it to her children, but maybe it had skipped a few generations and now we have it. We are dream travelers? I thought to myself, all confused. He went on to say that he had heard the stories from his dad. He went on to explain that he was always here for the whole time since the unfortunate accident. Matt said it was all a blur. He told me all of what he knew about it, about our gift that is. We walked and talked through the clearing to another path. This path looked different. It had taller bushes with a foggy thick haze lingering over it. We started walking down this particular path and finally the path came to the end. There was a huge rock that looked like it was made of shiny, wet cement with prism colors around it. Underneath the rock lied a hole that was big enough for our bodies to fit into. We both entered the hole. Matt went first without any hesitation. I carefully and hesitantly slipped down the slope, which led into a huge cave. Chapter 5 The Cave. The people in the cave were sitting cross-legged on somewhat looked like waxy floating devices, all of them were at different levels, and it seemed pretty remarkable. Matthew said that each of them were elders from their own tribes. I looked around and took in everything I could. There was stuff hanging from the ceilings, I believe it was some type of wind chimes. There was some beautiful art carved into the cave walls. I also noticed a map, I think it was of the whole entire realm. One really old North American Indian-looking woman with leathery, wrinkled skin whispered my name and motioned for me to come to her. I looked around and looked at Matt and he said not to worry because she was from our great-grandmother's tribe. She handed me a basket and asked me to go pick berries. From where? I asked. She just said, go. Matt came with me and showed me where we could pick berries from. The path was the familiar one, the one when I first came to the realm or whatever it was called. The berries were a crystal-like substance, but were soft to eat. Matt was eating them while he was picking them. I was just about to put one into my mouth when he abruptly shouted, "Don't!" I got scared and threw it onto the ground. He told me not to eat them unless I never wanted to go back to the other or what I had called the real realm. "Why are you eating them, Matt?" I asked in a very concerned voice. He answered because, and that was it. Just then, Alexander shouted as he was walking towards us down the path. He said, "Hey guys, how's it going?" "Hi Alexander," again the strong attraction was there. "How is that you can speak here but not at home?" He answered with a confusing look on his face, "Everything is different here, isn't it great?" Once our basket was full, we trotted down the well-known path. When we got back, the old woman got off her floating device and took the basket. She didn't even say thank you. She started mixing them with herbs and I think flour and mixed the strange ingredients together. She put them into a pan, a wooden pan, I think it was wooden, and placed it in the stone oven. While it was baking, I smelled the best and greatest smell that I had ever smelled in my whole 12 years of life. I was getting pretty hungry. I woke up in my bed once again, and thanks to that, because I would have been tempted to eat it. I immediately went down to the kitchen and found the biggest bowl I could find and poured a bunch of cereal in it. I found some blueberries in the fridge, so I added them with milk and pigged out. Chapter 6 Sadness. The school film and its production were going well and everyone seemed to be having fun. Austin, Samantha Harris's boyfriend, was playing the policeman who was investigating the crime of the stolen baby. It was funny and the class was laughing, mostly because he looked so ridiculous in the oversized policeman's uniform. Sarah and I had on shiny skirts, mine bright pink with sequences on it, and hers a bright blue satin with an eloquent embroidery design on the bottom. We all just had a plain white t-shirts on for the tops. Our school used the front street of the school for the filming of the parade. It was a fairly dead street with just some old two-story houses. To my complete surprise, Alexander and his grandmother were watching from the side of the curb with a few other onlookers. I smiled at him and he smiled back at me. It was a fun day and it was Friday. I asked Sarah if she could come over for a sleepover. She replied, "I'll ask my mom and dad and I will phone you later." We were going to try to sleep in the camper again. When I got home, my mom and dad were standing in the front hallway as if they were waiting for me. I threw my backpack down on the bottom stair and they said, "Emily, we have some sad news." Their faces were all wet and their eyes were red from tears. They looked like someone had just died. They said, "Your cousin Matthew died today." I was speechless and just sat on the stairs in shock. I did not cry or even say a word. The phone was ringing and my mom went to answer it. My father just looked at me with a dumbfounded look and walked away. I could tell that he didn't know what to say or do. It didn't feel real at all and I just didn't want to think about it at all. I had just seen Matt last night and he was fine. I guess I was in shock because I didn't have any reaction whatsoever. My mother was on the phone with Sarah. I could tell because my mother said that the sleepover would have to be postponed because Emily's cousin passed away. We went over to my aunt and uncle's house to visit, and we brought a plate of crackers and cheese with some dainties from the neighborhood bakery. My Aunt Rita, who was Matthew's mother and my mother's sister, seemed fine, but my Uncle Georgie was beside himself. He looked like he was taking it pretty hard. There were some other relatives there too, some of whom I had never met. I had overheard my Aunt Rita saying at least he was out of his coma for a while and that he talked for a few minutes. I quickly asked, "What? I mean, pardon me? When did this happen? I never heard about this." "Oh yes," she said, "about half an hour before he died, and he said that he was going to walk down the path, and he then said, 'Bye Mom, I love you.'" I stood there staring at her like I was in absolute shock, and then I began to cry a little. My mouth was just hanging open, and I'm sure I had the dumbest look on my face, but no one noticed because of all the grief. Some of the other visitors were sniffling and crying, including my mother. Then she went on to say, "I guess he was trying to tell me that he was dying." Then she started weeping uncontrollably. My mother was trying to console her when she also started to cry uncontrollably. I went outside with my older cousin Ricky, who I hadn't seen in a couple of years. I felt like I couldn't breathe and I needed air. We sat on the front steps together. Ricky asked what grade I was in now, and we chatted about nothing very important. He was a 15-year-old boy that was a little on the heavy side with longer blonde wavy, greasy hair. He went on and on about his dirt bike and about all the work he was doing on it. I thought I would go back in the house to have a snack. That night I fell asleep and didn't even go to the path at all. It seemed as though I didn't even dream at all. If I did, I didn't remember. Chapter 7. The production. The next day I woke up to the smell of breakfast cooking and with the bright sun shining through my dirty window directly into my eyes. It was late, I thought, so I quickly ran downstairs and asked why in the world no one woke me up for school. My mom said, "Oh, you could stay home from school today, I figured that you would have wanted to." I said, "No, I have to go to school." I grabbed my backpack with my brush in my hand, ran out and slammed the door. When I got there, Mr. Prozac said, "I'm sorry about your loss, Emily." I said thank you and went about doing my work. In the afternoon, we were going to watch our production with another class. Mr. Prozac made popcorn for the event and the class was extremely boisterous before the film started. Mr. Prozac had even threatened that we would do math instead if the class didn't settle down. There it was, the title of our class film. The Circus and the Missing Baby. In the film, I saw Alexander standing there with his grandmother on the sidewalk. The expression on his face showed that he was pleased with our little production. The next thing I noticed was that he had a ring on his pinky finger. The ring picked up the sunlight and was super shiny, sort of like the crystal berries of the path. Everyone clapped after the film and it was over. We thought it was pretty good, although we had heard the other class whispering and laughing secretly a few times. That night I saw Matt and Alexander at the clearing. I told Matt that he was missed very much. I gave him the longest hug ever. But I didn't mention anything about him dying in the real realm. I just couldn't. Alexander smiled at me and said, "See Monday, I want to show you something." I followed him down a hill with flowers that were glistening and so beautiful. He showed me some waterfalls that you could stand right under without getting wet. We stood under them and only a light mist of water sprayed on our faces. It was truly delightful and romantic. There was a rainbow prism color that the sun was making in the mist. I'm not sure if it was the sun, but it was bright. I was just about to ask him about his ring when he reached over and kissed me. Chapter 8. Samantha's family and the cube. Today was the day of Matt's funeral. How sad it was. His mother, my Auntie Rita, was taking it pretty hard. To my surprise, Matt's dad was doing much better. My family sat in the pew right behind my aunt and uncle. I noticed the whole pew was shaking from the sobbing. I began to sob also and it was uncontrollable. Why did he have to die? I asked myself. I don't understand. Life doesn't seem fair at all. The man who caused the car accident was there with his family. I heard my mother say it to my father. When I looked over, it was a big man with red hair. He was wearing a brown suit with a striped brown and tan tie. I looked next to him and saw Samantha's mother and Samantha sitting with him. I couldn't believe it. I knew this was a fairly small town, but seriously, I had no idea. It seemed like I was often missing information about major events or tragedies. After the funeral, everyone made a single file to meet the family at the front and they gave their condolences. I noticed that Samantha and her family were not in the line anymore. They must have left. On the way home I asked my parents what exactly happened. They said that Mr. Harris, Samantha's father, was drunk when he hit the car Matthew was in. He has since been sober, but Samantha's mother took to drugs. People think it was because everyone in town kept talking about the accident. That night I really wanted to see my cousin Matt, so I said good night to my mom and dad and went to bed. I couldn't sleep because my thoughts were racing about the dream realm and the funeral. Finally, I must have fallen asleep because the all too familiar path with the crystal berries was darker than usual. When I got to the end, I saw Matt and he was looking good as always. He was skateboarding on the best and biggest half-pipe that I had ever seen. He said that he had made it. "We can make stuff here?" I asked. "Yes," he replied. "I will show you." "Wait, Matt, I want to talk to you. There was a funeral, you died, and your parents are very sad." He just said, "See Monday, hurry, I want to show the creative cube place." Sure enough, we arrived to a cube that was floating in the air. We had to jump across moving some type of surfaces that looked like see-through clouds. It was so fun and awesome. I completely forgot about any grief or pain that I had felt from Matt's funeral. Alexander and some other boys that I never met were there. He smiled at me and tried to show me what he was creating. He was making a really big slingshot, so his friends and he could shoot each other across the sky. The other boys were making the largest, fluffiest looking landing. It looked like an endless supply of the largest cotton balls, or maybe they were marshmallows. Either way, it was cool. "I want to make something," I said. They said, "Okay. Here, you have to put this on." They handed me this silver, helmet type of hat with crystals in the front, top and back. One of the boys that were with Alexander said, "Okay, now you must think of what supplies that you will need to make it." I tried to sort out what I would need to make a chocolate fountain with caramel coming out of it. Let's see, I would need a big chunk of chocolate, some carving tools, a large bag of caramels, a pot and a stove, a nice stand to put it on, and then with not much concentration at all, bang! All of a sudden there were my supplies right in front of me. This was so much fun. I really wanted my friend Sarah to come here. I thought that I must go and get her. The boys told me about a leaf that was for the non-dream travelers. Alexander and I went to find out where to get one. We had to first go to the caves where the elders were dwelling to get a map. The map was like a GPS system, but all on a small piece of birch bark. It showed exactly where we were standing, and a red arrow thingy moved when we moved. The place was far away. While we were walking, Alexander gave me his ring. He said that I was the one for him. His great-grandmother, who was an old gypsy woman, gave it to him, and it was only intended for the girl of his dreams. My heart began to dissolve and I gave him a kiss. "We are here," I said. The tree was not that tall, it had branches then went out really, really far. It wasn't like anything in the real realm, where the trunk of the tree is usually brownish, gray, and where the leaves were green. This tree had a green trunk with shiny see-through purple leaves. I picked a few of them and stuffed them into my back pocket. Chapter 9, Such a Dreamer. Sarah was over for our sleepover and I told her absolutely everything. I know she thought I was crazy and she may have thought that I was making the whole thing up. I explained about how Matt was there and Alexander, and how Alexander talks there and he is my boyfriend there. I told about how you can make things there. She said, "Oh Emily, you clearly have a great imagination. You are such a dreamer. After all, you did write the story for our class film." She then said maybe this could be a class film as well. How could I convince her? As I was thinking of what might convince her, she fell asleep. I was just looking at her when I noticed that her part of leg was uncovered. I pulled the blanket over her and I noticed bruises black and blue on the outside side of her leg. What happened? I thought. I decided to put the leaf in her mouth while she was sleeping. I got to the path and I didn't see Sarah. Where was she? Was she at the evil path that was called the Nowhere Land path? Did she end up down there? How could I get her back? We went to the Elder's cave and asked for help. I explained to them that my friend was supposed to be here but I couldn't find her here, and one of them said that we could probably find her if we go to the telepathic tangled bushes. They explained where it was but then just gave me a birch bark GPS. I saw Alexander and he said that he would come with me. We walked really far, talking and laughing. In the back of my mind, I was feeling bad now about giving Sarah the leaf. On the way, we saw a hut made of a blue mud substance and brown shiny leaves. There was something else outside the hut but we couldn't make it out. When we got closer, I was stuck in awe, my mouth was hanging open. There were 5 blue human-like heads floating and talking. They were saying, "Emily, Emily, Emily, we like your films. Emily, 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 we like your realms." We were not afraid but we didn't know if we should talk to them, so we just kept walking. What did they mean? Chapter 10 Sarah and the Tangled Bushes. Finally, we arrived to the telepathic tangled bushes and sure enough, Sarah was tangled in these bushes. They looked like soft, spongy, colored wires. I yelled, "Sarah, are you okay?" She answered in a high-pitched voice, "I am fine. I believe you now." We told her to concentrate to untangle herself and we would too, since this what the elders said to do. She tried and we also concentrated with her and the bushes started untangling and letting her go. The elders said that the purpose of the telepathic tangled bushes were for sending messages to the other realm. You just had to speak into the wires and it would put thoughts into the heads of people you wanted to communicate with there. Sarah was free and began walking and talking with us. I just started telling her all about this place when she saw a boy and then didn't pay attention to word I said. Sarah was boy crazy. I piped up and said, "Sarah, this is Josh." Josh with his dimples, and pretty, dreamy eyes. Well, pretty for a boy, he looked at Sarah. Sarah was just staring and smiling, looking like a silly dumb girl. She tripped and fell while she was staring at him and we all began to laugh. Josh and Sarah hit it off and Sarah somewhere along the way decides that she doesn't want to go back. In a matter of only 1 hour, Josh was trying to convince her to eat the crystal berries. He did this by telling her that there weren't any parents here while blinking his pretty long-lashed eyes. Sarah takes me aside and tells me a secret about her parents that make me sick to my stomach. She said her parents hit her all the time and that her dad hits her with his belt and sometimes even whacks her with wine bottles. Sarah also said that everyone thinks her parents are great because they always volunteer at all the school functions, but they are drunks. She went on to say, they drink all the time, and then get mad at me for no reason. The police are often at our house for domestic violence reports from the neighbors. One night I even had to stay in a foster home. I said, "Sarah, please don't eat the berries, at least not yet, wait, okay?" She said, "Emily, I probably will eat them, this place seems awesome." Suddenly, I woke up and it was Sunday morning in my bed. I couldn't even think about the real realm of my house and homework. My mind was only thinking about the dream realm. I decided to call Sarah. Her mother said she is not here and matter of fact she wasn't home all night. I asked, "Well, where is she?" Her mother said, "I don't know, I was hoping that she was at your house." Chapter 11 Missing. I was pretty worried by Monday morning when I went to school because Sarah wasn't there. I asked Mr. Prozac and he said the school would be making a phone call to her home. At lunch, I ran all the way to Sarah's house. As I was approaching the driveway, I saw police entering at the side door. I also went to the side door and knocked on the door but then just opened it and walked in. "Oh, hi Emily, the police are here to ask questions, maybe you could help," Sarah's mom said in a really calm, business-like voice. I couldn't even look at her in the face since I heard the truth about their family. Ask questions about what? Well dear, Sarah is missing. As I answered a series of questions in my mind, I started thinking that this is entirely my fault. I quickly left and went back to school feeling a little shaken and numb. Suddenly, I had an idea. A place that Sarah and I said we would go to if we ever ran away from home, although, I never really wanted to run away. It was an old fishing shack down by the river. It was hidden in the bushes and we didn't think anyone in the world knew where it was except us. After school, I ran as fast as I could. On the way I saw Samantha. She asked, "Where's the fire?" "Oh, hey Sam, come with me if you like," and she began to run with me with not even knowing where my destination was going to be. Finally, when we were a bit closer I started to slow down and was trying to catch my breath. Through heavy breathing, I told Sam that I was looking for Sarah because she was missing. When we walked through the heavy brush, we finally spotted the worn-down little shack. When we got closer, I said to Sam, "I hope she's here." I flung open the door and what I saw was very shocking and awful. It was Sarah and Alexander kissing. Chapter 12. Within a dream I woke up in a hospital. The blinds were light blue and blurry. I guess I had fainted and hit my head on a rock. This is what the tiny, pretty nurse who had come in told me. I fell back asleep and went walking down the path once again. I saw Alexander and he was so happy to see me. I told him to get away from me because he was a two-timing jerk. His mouth dropped in shock and he asked, "What does a two-timing jerk mean?" I saw you kissing Sarah, here is your stupid ring back," and I started crying and sobbing loudly. Matt came and said, "Come with me, we need to talk." He took me down to the river on a boat that he made. It was really nice, the river water was rainbow colors, but I was too mad and hurt to appreciate it. He was about to talk to me but I said leave me alone and fell asleep on the riverboat. Sleeping within a dream, strange, I don't think that I even dreamed a dream. I wasn't quite sure. I awoke so groggy and squinted my eyes to see all the surroundings and they were still so familiar and wonderful. Matt and I were in this boat and he was just paddling along. I told Matt that I should wake up and get back to the real realm cause it feels like I've been here forever. He said, "Emily, you are awake, you've inherited the gift of dream traveling." I said, "You know what I mean, Matt?" He answered, "No, but maybe I can guess because of the films you created here." What? My mind was foggy and I was still groggy. What? Did I hit my head or something in this realm? I thought, what the heck was going on? I need to go back now, Matt, can you just help me get back? He said gently in a quiet but teaching kind of voice, "There is nowhere to get back to, Emily. This is your home. You created the other world in your dreams, the people, the places, and events, then you somehow shared them. You made films that they are playing in the hut. Emily, this is the real world. This is reality." With a look of disbelief I yelled, "You're a liar, Matt. You are a big fat liar." "No, it's true. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I want to go back and I need to go back." "How do I go back?" Emily said, panicked. Matt said, "Never mind, I'm going to take you to the zoo. You will be amazed." The End. The Dream Traveler and the Crystal Berries by Luanne Griffin.